You've heard of My Brother's Keeper. This is an initiative that the president initially spoke about last February. It's an initiative that really reaches out to young boys, young men of color, and using the power of the presidency to get foundations and businesses working together to help these young boys and young men across the country. So President Obama has stopped by this college here in the Bronx in New York. So as they're running a smidge late, but we're going to take that as soon as it happens. In the meantime, just in the last couple of minutes before we see the president, he actually sat down with a number of young men and also John Legend, and they held a roundtable. Here it was.
If you have any doubt about the incredible promise and potential of America, then you need to get to know these young men, because they are examples of intelligence, hard work, empathy and compassion, some street smarts, and all these young men are going to do incredible things with their lives. Many of them are already doing incredible things with their lives. Part of what we wanted to do was to make sure we heard directly from young people who oftentimes are growing up in really tough situations, single-parent households, low-income communities, crime-infested areas. We've heard stories of some of these young men being stopped and put on the ground by police for no reason. Domestic abuse inside the household. Situations where the schools don't seem to be invested in their success. And yet, despite all that, these young men are succeeding in some remarkable ways. And part of what I heard from them was that they're succeeding because somewhere along the line they've received a mentor, somebody who's just paying attention to them and giving them some sense of direction. Part of what we've heard is that they've had the opportunity in some way to participate in community service and to get involved, and have been able to show themselves that they matter and they count and that they can make amazing things happen in their own communities. And what all of them suggested is that if we're going to be successful in addressing some of the challenges that young men of color face around the country, that their voices have to be part of how we design programs and how we address these issues, because they've got a lot to say, and what they say is powerful and makes.
So leading this initiative is, of course, the president. But you see all these faces on your screen. You recognize these men helping with this foundation. You have John Legend, former NFL star Jerome Bettis, Secretary of State Colin Powell, and New Jersey Senator Cory Booker. And the man you're about to hear from here, NBA Hall of Famer Alonzo Mourning, talked to me just a bit ago about his friendship with the president and why he shares this common value of helping underprivileged children in this country.
We share the same interests, and it all resonates from when we were younger and understanding the opportunities that we were given as children. And there's a lot of children, we understand that there's a lot of kids out here, especially young men of color, who have the ability, they just don't have the resources, So all of this is centered around basically trying to provide the same resources that we were given to these individuals, these young individuals, they come from some very economically challenged areas.
I want to get into some of those challenges. I witnessed them with my own eyes in some parts of West Baltimore last week. But right. as it pertains to these right. young men of color, I mean, the president launched My Brother's Keeper last February, and I know, right. You and your foundation, you're out and about, and you're helping young people as well. What is, when you're talking to young men who have not a lot of hope and not a lot at their fingertips, right. what is your message?
Well, it's simple. That they are capable of doing anything that they set their mind to by surrounding themselves with the right people. And through our foundation, that's exactly what we do. You think about young people and you think about the journey that they have to take and all the obstacles that they're confronted with. The difference between the ones that do well and the ones that don't do well is them having that strong voice of influence in their lives, and that just makes the difference in whether or not they go left or right. So We bring these kids into this world. They don't ask to come into this world. And everybody talks about the issues and that our young people are having and the problems that they are. And we don't have a youth problem. We have an adult problem. And I think that adult problem basically is centered around as our adults not really prioritizing all the things necessary to help map out the right blueprint for our young people to take steps forward in life.
You know, I think you're hitting on an issue. I'm talking to someone else in the show who wrote this phenomenal essay on CNN.com, essentially saying, where are all the black men in these communities, right? Because of mass incarceration over minor drug offenses, et cetera. The lack of role models. I mean, I was there last week. It's like you have the reverends from these churches, and you have some community leaders, but there really is this dearth. And you add that with limited job options, you know, and without rec centers and little league fields. What do you have left?
Well, I will tell you this, you know, I think the president put it perfectly in his second State of the Union speech that I had an opportunity to attend. And he said that the antidote for poverty is a world-class education. And what we need to do is we need to try to continue to provide those educational opportunities, which in turn is going to create options for these young men. That many of them feel like they don't have options, you know, but you arm them with the right information necessary for them to develop the right mentality. And throughout their overdevelopmental process, exposure is key. We have to expose our young people to things outside of their community because, you know, as the old saying goes, what they see is what they'll be. So we got to show them other opportunities and what they can aspire to be, you know, and I think that's the dilemma that we face, and we just can't leave it to our public school system to do it. We can't.
Yep. Can I just ask you on a personal level, Alonzo, how did you feel growing up as a young man, as a teenager? How did you feel about police?
How did I feel about police?
Yes, sir.
Well, I looked at them, I looked at them as individuals that were giving the job to protect and serve the community, you know, and I think that in the wake of some of the recent events around the country, the whole perception of police have changed, you know, and they are being looked at more as, and not all of them are this, but they're looked at more as adversaries, you know, and unfortunately, you know, I really feel like that we are at a state and time in our lives, you know, where we need to try to come together and address these issues, you know, and we're not on this island by ourselves, we're not in this world by ourselves, we're all here together. And we need to, the individuals of authority need to address a lot of these issues that we're dealing with, you know, and I think that the long and short of it is that we have to prepare our young people to handle positions of authority a little bit better in a lot of different ways.
I bet, Alonzo, you have law enforcement friends, and I'm wondering on the flip side, you know, what are they sharing with you in the wake of all of these stories we're seeing, not just in Baltimore, but nationwide?
Well, I do have some friends of mine, and it's a tough job. It's a tough job when you're in a position where you have to protect and serve, and many of them are intimidated. They are, you know, and they're scared of what they're confronted with on a daily basis, you know, so many of them kind of react without thinking, but as professionals, we expect them to react and make the right decisions. Many of them don't make the right decisions all the time, you know, so because of that, there's a stereotype that is created just by a couple of bad apples. There's a stereotype that's created, you know, where all of us are kind of looking at these police men and women, the people that supposed to protect and serve us, they're looked at as villains. All of them are being looked at villains now.
Joining me from the Bronx around this whole My Brother's Keeper event, the Alonzo Mourning. It has been a pleasure. Thank you so much. My best to you, Alonzo.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
And that was Alonzo Mourning, and here he is, the President of the United States. Again, just to set this up, he is in the Bronx, in New York, specifically speaking about this initiative, My Brother's Keeper, helping young minority men and boys all around this country, helping bring them up, help them find opportunities. And so he may very well address what has happened most recently in Baltimore involving the death of Freddie Gray. Let's listen.
America is a place where you can make something of your lives. And I want to thank Lehman for hosting us here today, and our community college system, the CUNY system, our public education institutions. They are all pathways for success, and we're very proud of what they do. Everything that we've done since I've been president, past 6.5 years, from rescuing the economy to giving more Americans access to affordable health care, to reforming our schools for all of our kids, it's been in pursuit of that one goal, creating opportunity for everybody. We can't guarantee everybody's success, but we do strive to guarantee an equal shot for everybody who's willing to work for it. But what we've also understood for too long is that some communities have consistently had the odds stacked against them. That there's a tragic history in this country that has made it tougher for some. And folks living in those communities, and especially young people living in those communities, could use some help to change those odds. It's true of some rural communities where there's chronic poverty. It's true of some manufacturing communities that have suffered after factories they depended on closed their doors. It's true for young people of color, especially boys and young men. You all know the numbers. By almost every measure, the life chances of the average young man of color is worse than his peers. Those opportunity gaps begin early, often at birth, and they compound over time, becoming harder and harder to bridge, making too many young men and women feel like no matter how hard they try, they may never achieve their dreams. And that sense of unfairness and of powerlessness, of people not hearing their voices, that's helped fuel some of the protests that we've seen in places like Baltimore and Ferguson and right here in New York. The catalysts of those protests were the tragic deaths of young men and a feeling that law is not always applied evenly in this country. In too many places in this country, black boys and black men, Latino boys, Latino men, they experience being treated differently by law enforcement in stops and in arrests and in charges and incarcerations. The statistics are clear, up and down the criminal justice system. There's no dispute. That's why one of the many things we did to address these issues was to put together a task force on community policing. And this task force was made up of law enforcement and of community activists, including some who had led protests in Ferguson, some who had led protests here in New York, young people whose voices needed to be heard. And what was remarkable was law enforcement and police chiefs and sheriffs and county officials working with these young people, they came up with concrete proposals that, if implemented, would rebuild trust and help law enforcement officers do their jobs even better and keep them and their communities even safer. And what was clear from this task force was the recognition that the overwhelming majority of police officers are good and honest and fair and care deeply about their communities. And they put their lives on the line every day to keep us safe. And their loved ones wait and worry until they come through that door at the end of their shift. As many of you know, New York's finest lost one of its own today, Officer Brian Moore, who was shot in the line of duty on Saturday night, passed away earlier today. He came from a family of police officers. And the family of fellow officers he joined in the NYPD and across the country deserve our gratitude and our prayers, not just today, but every day. They've got a tough job. Which is why, in addressing the issues in Baltimore or Ferguson or New York, the point I made was that if we're just looking at policing, we're looking at it too narrowly. If we ask the police